Welcome to In the Ven Zone with Christine McKay, where we get candid about what it takes to negotiate effectively. You'll learn from the challenges and successes of entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. We help you change the nature of your negotiations and get more from every deal you do.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of In the Ven Zone, where we help you, the small and mid-sized business, elevate your negotiations. And we do that by bringing you fantastic guests who have amazing experience and great stories about their negotiations as they have moved their businesses forward and grown and pivoted and changed directions, all that good stuff. And today is no exception. We have with us today Christina Nicholson. And Christina used to be a TV host, and there's got to be some negotiation stuff that happens in that world. And she's also the founder of Podcast Clout, which is a really great tool. And I can't wait to have her tell you guys more about it. And she also runs a PR agency, Media Maven. Christina, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Christine. I'm excited to chat with you.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about how did you go from TV host to PR agency to being a software as a service maven in podcasting?
Okay, well, my background is in TV, as you mentioned. I was a full-time TV reporter and anchor. I did that for about 10 years. And during that time, I was pitched a lot by PR agencies and publicists to get their clients on TV. And a lot of those pitches just fell flat. Like, it was just very obvious that a lot of those people didn't know what it was like on the other side to sit in a newsroom and attend the meetings and put the stories together. So after I had a couple of kids, I was looking for a more flexible schedule. So I got a job at a PR agency. And 6 months into that job, I realized quickly that you cannot have flexibility working for somebody. So that's when I started my own PR agency. And it kind of slowly grew to where I built a team, and they were doing better work than I was. So I just kind of let them handle most of the things there. And it was during that job, or that career choice, because it was not really a job, I guess, if you own the business, right?
Yeah.
That I realized,
you hope not anyway. You hope it doesn't become a job.
It was during that time that I realized, podcasts are super helpful for me in building my brand and getting more clients. And when I get clients booked on podcasts, they're seeing a lot of benefit from it. But there's no easy way to find podcasts. There's over 1 million out there. And usually, you're just picking up your phone and scrolling through all of the apps and all of the shows, and it's hard to tell which ones are good, which ones are still active. How do I find the contact information to pitch them? So I created Podcast Clout, which is the software that basically automates all of that for you. And you can create a custom podcast pitch list, and you don't have to spend all of that time doing the admin work and just get all of the information you need. And I don't know anything about tech or software. So I started working with Aaron Kroll, who introduced me to you because you spoke about negotiations in his mastermind that I'm in. So that's how it all came full circle.
Yes, Aaron is amazing. I actually should get him on this show. He's an amazing guy. He runs a program called SaaS Visionaries, which is software as a service, and he provides all sorts of support and help to people starting software as a service businesses. And it's great that we met through that. And I'm glad. It was good to have you there. I had so much fun doing that event. That was awesome. So
he's very helpful. Like, he's, I've been in a lot of masterminds. I've had a lot of business coaches, and Aaron is very interested in actually helping you, not just, filling the seats to make the money. He's very invested in the people who are there to learn from him. So it's been a great experience.
Well, so in the show notes, we will include all the information for Christina and Podcast Clout, but I'll actually include a thing in there for Aaron too, since we've spent some time talking about him. So I'll let him know. So he'll be psyched to hear that. But so software as a service is a very interesting lane to go into, especially when you have no software background. So tell us about the process that you went through to actually get to decide, okay, well, we need a software to do this. We need to automate this. And how did you go about that? And how did you then start to think about that as a new business for you?
Well, I mean, honestly, I was waiting for somebody to start something like this for years because there are databases like this that exist for traditional media. So you can build a pitch list for newspapers, TV, online, magazines, but nothing for podcasts.
Mm.
And I'm in a Facebook group with 20,000 other people in the PR industry, and everybody's been talking about this. When are these other services going to add podcasts? Like, and finally, I just said, I mean, I don't know what came over me all these years later. I was like, all right, screw it. I'll just do it. And I just asked around. Again, I'm in a few different masterminds. So I'm like, who can do this? Who can build this? And it's very selective. I mean, I asked around in the masterminds that I was in, and I said, who knows how to do this? Who knows how to create? And I don't even know if I was calling it software at the time, but I was like, I want this online database. I want it to do this. And I don't know how to execute any of the tech behind it. And just like when you try anything new, it's a learning experience. And in this experience, I learned that if you are going to have somebody build something for you in the tech space, they should be niched in that space. You know, I hired a company that they did restaurant websites, and then they also did my product. And
Ah,
there was a disconnect. It was somebody in a mastermind I was in. So I was like, oh, I trust you. You say you know how to do this. And there were a lot of growing pains. And, I mean, it was created, but then it needed to almost be recreated. And now it's kind of being recreated again. It's still functional, obviously. It still works the way it's supposed to work. But I feel like, and apparently this is common in the software space, like you build it and people use it. And then you're like, ooh, this would make it better. Oh, do this would make it better. And every little thing that you do to make it better, you're like undoing what you just spent a bunch of time and money on 6 months ago. So it's constantly improving, which is good. But from my perspective, I'm like, geez, I feel like I'm wasting a lot of time and money because I keep changing something we just did. But I guess, you live and you learn, and that's just, you
mhm.
get feedback from your customers and they tell you what they like and what you don't like, and you implement those changes. So because this is still newer, it's about a year old, I am in that process and I'm really excited for where it can go. And I kind of have in my mind, like, okay, once we tick these things off the boxes, then I'll be happy to just like let it sit, and then we can, focus on the sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I think when you see what it could be, then you look at what it is now and you're like, oh, I want to hurry up and get it to where it could be. So for me, it was really just like tapping into my network, like who knows about this. That's why, again, with hiring a business coach, I needed a business coach who was niched in software as a service. It's very different from running a public relations agency. I mean,
Oh,
even the
yeah.
way you handle your finances is different. Like everything is so different. So I have learned a lot. And there are some things that I am just incapable of learning. And there are some things that I don't want to learn. And that's where you hire a team who is so much better and smarter than you at what they're doing, and they execute on your behalf. So that's kind of how I'm making it work.
So tell us, because we haven't really dove into it, tell us what the product is, because I'm like super excited about this. I was saying when we got started that I've been telling all my PR friends and every PR person I know in my network that they need to get this, and speakers need this product, especially if they're not using a PR agency. So tell us more about what the product is and what it does.
Yeah. So the problem people have is they know they need to get on podcasts as a guest so more people can hear about them, their expertise, build their brand. But if you open up the podcast app, you have over 1 million podcasts to scroll through, and you're like, which ones do I pitch? How do I know if their show is even accepting guests or they're publishing episodes right now? Because you can find a podcast in the app, but they haven't released a new episode in 3 years. So what we did is we found a way to just focus on the top podcasts in each category. And we're looking at all podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Google. What are the top podcasts in all of these categories? And there's over 100 categories. And we said, put those top podcasts in the database. We don't want podcasts that nobody's downloading, and we don't want podcasts that they've stopped releasing new episodes, because obviously you don't want to pitch those. You don't want to be a guest on those.
Right. Exactly.
So even though there's over 1 million podcasts out there, the database has around 25,000 podcasts to choose from. So automatically you're getting a high quality podcast. So then it's,
Mhm.
how do you find them? Well, you can search by category. We have a drop down, so you can search by category. And then we also have a search bar. So you can search by keyword. And if that keyword is picked up in the description of the podcast will pop up. So like say, for example, I do believe mental health is a category, but say, for example, you focus on anxiety or depression. You can search anxiety or depression in the search bar, filter out podcasts that have that keyword in the description for the podcast. And then you could niche it down even further by keeping that keyword in the search bar, but also making sure mental health is selected. So then you get that more niched grouping of podcasts. And then you can export all of the information. And what we do is when we don't do this automatically, this is updated manually for accuracy. And a lot of this information is hard to find. So our team has to search websites and social media, but we tell you all about the podcast host, and most importantly, how to pitch them. So do they prefer an email to this address? Do they have an online form on their website? So all of that information that us publicists have been spending hours and hours every week searching, we've just automated it for you and have put in easy searches and filters so you can customize exactly what you're looking for. And so that list you're building is super relevant to you.
That's just amazing. Everybody I know in the speaker space is like clamoring to get on podcasts. And I don't sit on Clubhouse very much, but most of the times when I go, I'm listening to the podcast rooms, and there are just so many people who are thinking about doing podcasts and want to be guests on podcasts. And it is because the statistics are not very good, right? Most podcasters, I think, do 7 episodes, and the average podcast that's live hasn't recorded in over a year. And it's like making sure, and then, as for me, like making sure, what do I need to do to stay relevant, to be in that top category, or to be top, in that bucket for what I do. And I think it's going to be huge. I think it's just an amazing product and super exciting. So let's talk a little bit about some of the differences between kind of how you've negotiated in the other parts of your business, whether it's as a TV host or as a PR person, and how that's totally different. Because we talked about this when we talked before, so different in the software as a service industry, because it is like night and day different industries. So what are some of the things that have been different for you in your negotiations with SaaS?
Well, I'll tell you, when I started my career, I was so afraid of negotiating. It just made me uncomfortable, especially about money. I just think it's an American thing where we are not taught any kind of financial education, any kind of financial literacy. Like, it's not good. People make money very uncomfortable by avoiding it. And everything we do in life, it surrounds itself with money. So when I started getting TV jobs in small markets, they would say, okay, we'll pay you $12 an hour. And I would just accept it. And I didn't want to have a conversation because, 1, I felt uncomfortable. And 2, I didn't even know how to have the conversation. Like, how do you even ask for more money? So as I started moving up in the industry, I got an agent. And what these agents are supposed to do is they're actually supposed to get you the jobs, and they're supposed to negotiate your contract for you. And it's funny because I went through 3 different agents and they never got me a job. I ended up getting the job myself. And what sucks is, even if you get the job yourself and you have an agent, you still have to pay the agent, a certain percentage of what you're making, even though they didn't do any of the work, because they say they will negotiate the contract for you. And I remember my last job, I was a reporter and anchor at the NBC station in Miami. And I had an agent at the time, and I was up for a contract renewal. So, I was like, oh, thank God I have an agent to handle this, because I don't want to negotiate this. And, I explained to him, like, I'd like to get more money. These are the things that I do, whatever. So he would go back to my news director, and my news director, I didn't get, like, the agent didn't get me anything extra. Like, what was presented to me was what I got. And so, again, I'm paying an agent for no reason. But I will never forget a conversation that my news director said to me. She brought me in and she was like, you shouldn't have your agent negotiate your contract. And I was like, why not? Because I'm thinking that's what he does. He knows how to do this. And she said, he doesn't even know what you do every day. Like he doesn't know, that you carry the camera around yourself. He doesn't know how many stories you do a day. He doesn't know the hours you work. He doesn't know your work ethic, this and that. Negotiate, you can negotiate better than him because you know what you do here and you know your relationships with people and this and that. And I was like, you're so like, I was like it was something where it's like, oh my God, that's so obvious. Like, why didn't I think of that? And it really was just because I felt uncomfortable asking for more because I wanted to be, I have a little bit of people pleasing in me. I don't want to ruffle the feathers. I'm so grateful that you want to renew my contract. I don't want you to regret it because now I'm coming at you saying, oh, that's nice, but now you need to change this and this. You know what I mean? I just kind of felt like, and I think, I'm sure, Christine, that's very common for people in negotiation. Like they're afraid it's going to come off a certain way instead of, what it truly is. So I just learned then, like, handle your own negotiation because the arguments, if for lack of a better word, that you want to present more so than somebody, even if that's supposedly their expertise, than what they can deliver. So that's like, when it comes to literal negotiation, that's like my first experience with it. And then moving into public relations, I feel like you negotiate a lot with clients in the PR space. There is a lot of education when it comes to clients who have never worked with PR. They don't understand why you can't guarantee them where they're going to be and how they're going to get there and when they're going to get there and what kind of sales is it going to drive. Like it's so much education, and on the receiving end, some people, they don't want to believe it works that way, or they really want it to work another way. So they're not really listening to you. You're trying to set expectations and they're not receiving the expectations because they want it to work another way. And even though it is like an educational conversation, it's almost like a negotiation because you need to get them to listen to you and to understand what you're saying because they're hiring you to do a job. And I think this is true in a lot of businesses with vendors. People will hire a vendor for something and you hire somebody to do your Facebook ads and you tell them how to do their Facebook ads. Like you can tell them the goal and they are supposed to be trusted with their expertise to execute. And when they come back and try to educate you, it really turns into a negotiation. So for me in the PR side, it was more working with clients. And then now on the software side, it is working with those, not just the customers and subscribers about like, what kind of different kind of tools do you want added to Podcast Clout? How can, we help you through the trial, things like that, but also with the team, like we have a lot of changes. We're making a lot of updates and improvements, and these things take time. I don't know how long it takes. All that stuff's over my head. But if I'm going to ask you like, hey, can we get this done in a week? And they tell me it's going to take a month, then that conversation is almost like a negotiation. Like, well, I'm going to tell you, like, I got a long list of things I want here. So we got to move this up. Like, how can we work this out? So I feel like I always thought negotiation was that first example I gave. Like, how do I get more money? And I have learned that over the course of my career that it really is a conversation with clients and team. It's like you're constantly negotiating.
And that, I love that because, and our listeners know that my big philosophy on negotiation is that negotiation is nothing more than a conversation about a relationship, and you cannot win a relationship. And so, especially in the United States, but in other parts of the world, because for me, in my opinion, unfortunately, kind of our win-lose kind of model of negotiation is unfortunately permeating other parts of the globe as well. And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about, is getting us back to the understanding that negotiation is about relationship. And you actually mentioned, you were talking about kind of dollars and cents. And the thing is that, and I've said this before on the show too, price is an output of a negotiation, not necessarily an input, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into determining price on things. And so if you negotiate what those things are that contribute to price, then price is an easy part of the conversation because all the assumptions that lead to it have been addressed already. What are some of the differences between negotiating with how the engineering folks that you work with now negotiate and think about negotiations versus people in the PR or the television space? What's been different for you? How have you had to adapt to that different style?
It's so different. I mean, and then even something I didn't mention with TV when I was talking about negotiating my contract. Another thing my news director said, she said, you shouldn't always try to get more money, because if you once you reach a certain amount of money, then you're going to be taxed more. And then you're actually going to make less money after your tax. So you should be asking for more vacation time. You should be asking for a take home car. And then that opened my eyes to like a whole other thing. Like, it's not always about money. It's about other things that money can buy. Mm-hmm. So I think, like in TV, it didn't have to do with anybody else except for my news director, and even not really my news director. Like, she doesn't care what I get paid. It doesn't affect her. It's, the people above her. She's just the messenger. It was just one person. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about PR and we're clients, like, that's where it can get stressful, because you want to have a good relationship with clients. You want them to like you and your team, and you want them to know, like, and trust you. So, and it's the same with the software, with the team and the customers. Like, you want to have a good relationship. And I think moving from TV to PR and software, it's crazy just to see how many different personalities there are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what throws a wrench in things, because some people have, very stubborn personalities where they don't even care what's right and wrong. They just want it their way. And there's not willing to negotiate. Mm-hmm. So I think, the biggest change is that, with TV news, it was really just for the contract. And then every day you were fine. When you're in a service-based industry, it's like every day with people and this wide array of personalities and different personalities. And some of them, they just want to talk on the phone all the time. Like, well, let's hop on a call. Well, there's no reason for a call for this. Or, you send them an email and they read the email in a defensive way. Like, they take it as you're being rude, when if they would just read it in a Minnie Mouse voice, they would see it's not defensive at all. So I think for me, the biggest change is definitely just all of the personalities, because you never know how somebody's going to react to something. Mm-hmm. And you almost, you're always second guessing yourself. Like, well, do I approach this person this way, the way they want to be approached? Do I approach them the way I approach everybody else? Like, it's really, people are tricky. And I think that's what makes the whole team, customer, client dynamic very interesting.
I agree. And I love that. People are tricky. Yes, they absolutely are. They can be the most glorious thing and the most frustrating thing all at the same time. And you're right. I mean, the thing is that, and whether every negotiation is a communication, or you're communicating all the time, but not every communication is a negotiation, right? So like, if you're talking emails and things like that, we talk a lot about, in our Venn Masters program, we talk about negotiation styles. And part of that, how we define them, we include communication attributes. And we divided it into two. We were like, what's a down and dirty, simple way that I can say to people, if I'm going to go engage with you, how do I just go glance at your LinkedIn profile and develop an assumption of whether I should send you an hour-long invite, a 30-minute invite, or a 15-minute invite? How do I send you an email that's like written out like a letter in paragraph form, or do I just throw some bullets? Do I shoot you a text, right? So we developed this view of whether somebody is a traditional communicator or a modern communicator. And modern communicators like short meeting. So if I see somebody on LinkedIn and they have virtually no information at all on their LinkedIn, or it's all in bullets, and they only reference their current and maybe their last job, I'm more likely to send them a meeting invite for 15 minutes, just to quick get to know you. Let's set the stage. But if I see somebody's got a lot of detail and they have initials after their name, that they're a CFA, CPA, MOUSE, sticking with Disney thing here, then I'm likely to invite them to a longer meeting, or give them the option of a longer meeting, so that, because they want to build they want to build deeper relationships, whereas the modern person just wants to get things done and move on next, right? And so understanding that communication style is important when you're trying to initiate a relationship. Once you've initiated that relationship, then it's about negotiating how that communication is going to take place. I should not have to adapt my negotiation style or my communication style 100% of the time, but neither should my counterpart. So it's like, okay, I just had an email this morning. I'm working with a bunch of folks and we're creating an event later this year, and there's a meeting today. Well, it was put in Messenger. I don't pay attention to Messenger very much. I rarely, and it's a terrible place to schedule a meeting, because if it isn't on my calendar, I am not going to remember it.
Same.
And so the person organizing it was upset, because it turns out there are like 3 or 4 out of a group of 6 of us, 7 of us, who cannot be there for this meeting today. And she was annoyed about it, and understandably so. So I responded, I said, look, I missed it. I saw it, but I did not get into my calendar. And that's on me. But can we move this, instead of trying to do this in Messenger, can we move this to emails and calendars so that it's more manageable? And, but it's like, how is, because I know people who are like totally okay communicating in Messenger. I'm like, that is not me. That is not me.
I'm the same. If it's not in the calendar, it's not getting done. And sometimes I'll ask people, if they're scheduling the meeting, I will ask them to send me a Google Calendar invite. If I'm doing it, then I like to schedule the invite myself. And some people, they don't use Google Calendar, so they don't send the invite. And, sometimes I will miss a thing or two, because again, if it's not in the calendar, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes, and I think this is on me as well as sometimes another person, even asking things like that, I'm always afraid of offending somebody. And I have seen other people get offended. And I think that that's probably also where the communication, negotiation gets tricky, is because you're afraid to be completely honest in what you want, because you don't want to offend the other person, or you don't want to hurt their feelings, or you don't want them to think negatively about you. And Brene Brown actually does a great job with, like, just always say how you feel and you're good. Like she does a job of, how to communicate and, kind of leave those worries behind. But I always, in the back of my mind, it's always there. I think maybe, again, it's the old people pleaser in me of, oh, if I say this, are they going to be offended? Is me asking them to send me a Google Calendar invite, is that like too much work for them? Like, should I just do it?
Yeah, I work with a gentleman named Blair Dunkley, who has been on the show. And to the audience, if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend it. We also worked together. He did 3 special sessions for my Venn Masters program, which I'm super excited about. And he talks about mind models. And so one of the things that he does is like, so like I just had somebody earlier this week. I was on a networking event, and we broke out into breakout rooms, and we went around and did introductions, and people get fascinated about what I do because they don't know very many people who do what I do. So I started getting peppered with questions, and I'm just question after question. So I ended up talking a lot of our breakout time. And I was like, oh my gosh, and I pay very close attention to the people on the screen. It was like, there was one person in particular. I looked at her and I'm like, she's not very happy. I need to change. I need to pull myself out of being the one to talk and ask a question. And so then the meeting was over and I was on to something else. And I get this email from the woman who organized the event. And it's this thing about proper etiquette on the when you're on the Zoom, and it like goes bang, 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 bang. And I could just like feel my mother in my head going, you took too much time. That voice that you just like cringe and you go, shit, did I do something wrong? So I stopped. I was like, okay, this is not very effective. So that's the first thing. Is this effective or not effective? No, this is not very effective. Is it externally verifiable or in my own head? This is totally in my own head. Nobody has told me that I did anything wrong, right? And am I judging the situation or am I evaluating it? I'm already placing judgment on this situation. So time out. Stop doing it. Okay, reel that back in, send an email and said, thank you for the email. I'm curious, is there an issue? And she sends an email right back. Oh no, this is just a standard email we send. I said, oh, well, this is the situation that was in my breakout room. I thought somebody had filed a complaint. After I read this message, I was concerned. She sends an email back saying, wow, I just reread this email out loud and it's terrible. I have to completely rewrite it. I am so sorry. Right. So, when we apply a model like that to a situation when we are uncomfortable or we're unsure of how somebody, because we can't control how somebody takes our tone. I mean, because we know what we intend for our tone to be and what we're trying to communicate, but how it is received and perceived is 100% on the recipient, and we cannot control that. We do not know what past things are, yelling, being that person's, thing on the shoulder, saying, reading tone into it, right? And that's one of the challenges with email communication. And so when, when you're negotiating, when you're trying to get something from somebody else, keep in mind that when you get that feeling, and we all do, we get that feeling like, oh crap, did I go too far? Did I stop? Ask yourself, just like Blair said in that episode, ask yourself, is what you're doing effective or not? Is it externally verifiable, or is it something that's in your own head that you're telling yourself? And then are you evaluating it, or actually looking at, evaluation criteria, or are you passing judgment on the situation? Because that will go, just doing those three things will go a long way to helping anybody who's listening deal with those feelings of, oh my God, should I be doing this differently? Or how will they perceive me?
That's amazing. I love that. Like those three things, that would help so many people, I feel, on a daily basis.
Oh yeah, it does. I mean, and Blair, definitely go listen to that episode. He is a remarkable man with remarkable ideas that he's developed over 40 years of research, and he's bringing it. He's now at the point where he's really bringing it out to the world, and I'm really excited to be part of his journey and to have him be part of mine, because just that, and he has many more kind of concepts like that, but just those three things alone just makes such a difference when you are negotiating or trying to influence. And when you're uncomfortable with something, it just changes how you evaluate things.
Yeah,
completely.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
I love that.
So tell me a little bit more about kind of where are you trying to go to next with Podcast Clout? And as you're thinking about it, how do you think, what are some of the things you think you see kind of in your future that you need to do to kind of elevate your negotiation in that process?
Well, I'm trying to do one thing at a time because I do have a long list. I've recently been introduced to Monday, like the task organization software. So, which is super fun because I love everything color coded and organized. So I have a long list of things to do. And I think for me right now, it's just making the platform the best it can be for the user. And then once that is there, the next step, and obviously I'm still selling it, I'm still marketing it. But I think after I am, and it's like people say this happens like when you buy a house, you move into a house, you're never completely satisfied. You're always making updates. And then when you think you're done, there's something new. Like, I know that's what it's good, but that's what the case is going to be. It's like with anything, but I really want, when I get, the main things I'm focusing on right now, done, then I'm going to, like really double down on marketing and sales and, start, putting some Facebook ads out there, things like that. And then I think, where negotiation is going to come big time is, after I spend some time growing it, I would like to sell it. And to be quite honest, I don't know anything about selling a business. So this is especially, a SaaS business. So I think this is one of those situations where, again, you work with somebody who knows a little bit more than you do about selling a SaaS business. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of negotiations there that I don't even, begin to understand what they are.
Yeah.
But I would reckon that would be the next big negotiation when it comes to dollars and cents.
Yeah.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, down the road in a few years.
And I love that you're thinking about that, because a lot of founders don't think, I think in tech and in SaaS, I think founders are more conditioned to think about what their exit is. But for a lot of small and mid-sized business owners and founders in particular, they don't always think about what's the exit. And we have listeners who have family-owned businesses, and it's like, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to pass it down? What happens if kids don't want it? Then what do you do? Do you have family dynamics that make selling it hard? Are you just going to wind it down? How do you monetize that? And that's actually really an important thing for people to think about in their negotiation, because your exit strategy should inform your negotiation style. So you want to make sure, like when you're negotiating contracts, that you have the right to transfer that contract. That is a huge thing, because if you don't have the right to transfer the contract and you sell the business, that contract doesn't go with the sale. And then the buyer has to do something that he or she may not want to do. So there are a number of things that you should be thinking about. And that, depending on what type of exit, if you want to go public, there are certain things that you want to make sure that you've negotiated in your contracts. So definitely, for the audience, make sure that you're thinking about what is that exit strategy, and how do you make sure that your contracts that you're entering into today actually enable that exit strategy and make it easier to execute on that exit. So
when I started my PR agency, I wasn't even thinking about an exit strategy. I was like, I just want to be my own boss. I just want to make my own hours, do what you know what I mean? And then I read this book that was referred to me called Built to Sell by John Warlow. And I recently brought John Warlow on my podcast, Become a Media Maven. And he just released another new book about selling. And it opened my eyes up to like, oh, you actually like sell these when you don't want to like do them anymore. It's not like paying rent in an apartment. It's like owning a house. And then when you're ready to move, you sell it and you make money. So then when I started Podcast Clout, I learned from the agency, like, oh, you can sell any business if it's successful. And then, you learn about how much money you need to make, your profit margin, all of the other things, to determine its worth and all of that. So, again, I'm not there yet. But yes, that's in the back of my mind as I'm doing these things and moving forward. Definitely.
That's awesome. So how do people find you?
I'm everywhere. So I'm very active on social. So you can find me there at Christina all day. Podcast Clout is podcastclout.com. And if you do want to get on more podcasts, I do have an exact pitch that landed me an interview on a popular podcast that I'm sharing with anybody. They can get that at podcastclout.com/Pat. It's I got on Smart Passive Income by Pat Flynn. So that's why it's /Pat.
Awesome.
And then with Media Maven, with my PR agency, you can check that out at mediamavenandmore.com. But the best way is probably on social. Twitter and Instagram are my big ones. I connect with most people on LinkedIn, unless you don't have a profile picture. And honestly, I hate to judge, I hate to stereotype, but if you are a financial advisor, I probably will not accept you, or if you sell insurance, just because every time I accept a financial advisor or somebody who sells insurance, I have a novel in my inbox because they want to sell me insurance and they want to be my financial advisor.
Yeah. I wish that industry, I should do something in that industry.
Help them, Christine. Help them.
It can be painful sometimes.
Real estate agents too. They need help. They need your help.
But we will put all that information in the show notes for everybody. And I've been really honored to have you. I've really enjoyed meeting you and getting to know you a little bit better. You are so dynamic and I love your energy. And I'm really excited about Podcast Clout. I think it's going to be a huge product for the market and it has so much potential. So I'm super excited for you and where that's going to go. And just thank you very much for being on the show.
Well, I'm so excited you asked me to come on and chat with you. I had a lot of fun, so thank you.
Perfect. And to everyone who's been listening or watching on our YouTube channel, thank you so much. It's always just an honor that you choose to spend time with us because that is the greatest gift that you can give us. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of In the Ven Zone. And in the meantime, don't forget that negotiation is nothing more than a conversation about a relationship, and you cannot win your relationships, but happy negotiating. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Ven Zone with Christine McKay. We invite you to visit our website at www.ven.zone to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Empower the negotiator in you and successfully level the playing field. Join us again next time here on In the Ven Zone.